What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the court. I got a couple of videos for you here on a Saturday. Disney Plus Day was yesterday, and I couldn't care less. Well, most people couldn't care less, but there's some little nuggets worth reporting, including, the disinterest or relative flop with investors. A couple of good, hook up, your hopium on a couple of shows, but by and large, just Disney doubling down on a lot of woke stuff, bringing some season twos of some general fan favorites. But you would think announcing all these things, we'd see better news from investors, but it did not go well. Marvel drops first look at upcoming She-Hulk series. Disney and Marvel bank on identity politics in first teaser for Ms. Marvel's Disney Plus series. Look, Ms. Marvel is not for me. I understand that. You may enjoy it. I thought for as short of a teaser as it was, they made sure to emphasize the fact that she's Muslim, which that's not part of your superpowers. And they also said something like, it isn't in our history for the brown girl to save everybody. Also cringe. I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding, some of it willful, by the people that don't like getting called out on this stuff, in that when you call something like it's woke trash or something like that, it'll often get presented as, just because there's a Muslim person in this show that it's woke. No, that's not it. Or just because a woman, there's a strong independent woman who don't need no man. No, that's also not true. Look, I just watched a show called Midnight Mass. And one of the stars of that film, a woke idiot, has I've feuded with him on Twitter. I still think the show was pretty dang good. It's a little out there for some people at the end, pretty dang good. Shows Sheriff is a Muslim, and and he lives in a very small community with a bunch of Catholics. And so it's relevant. You know what I mean? So when I see that representation, it doesn't smack of laziness, cram it in there. It actually weaved into the story pretty good, where because he was Muslim, I don't want to give anything away, but it worked really well. And so I wouldn't call that quote unquote woke trash, although they did have this really weird, bizarre monologue about, your anti-Muslim sentiment that didn't fit. That dialogue, I would say, was a little cringy and shoehorned. That's what people talk about when they talk about woke trash. They don't talk about they like to misrepresent people like you and I who look at this stuff and don't inherently think, oh no, there's a diverse cast. That's not inherently an issue. Where it's an issue is when it's lame and shoehorned in for only that reason. And it's so easy to tell the difference. There's a lot of people that will say X-Men was a anti-bigotry, thing, and X-Men was always woke, and ha ha ha, take that. People that don't like modern day woke stuff, they're redoing X-Men too. Right. X-Men was. And they never had to stop and spell it out to everybody. That's the difference. Well, X-Men, the original in the animated series, and even when Stan Lee created it, did have a social justice drive, but it wasn't lazy. And that's the biggest crime. You see this article, Disney and Marvel bank on identity politics in first teaser for Ms. Marvel. Released alongside a number of other trailers as part of Disney Plus Disney Day promotional event. A brief teaser serves as an introduction to the audience for both the star Kamala Khan, Iman Vellani, and her idolization of Captain Marvel, opening up the assumedly then unpowered protagonist glancing up in awe at a light display made in Carol Danvers' honor. The young hero suiting up for what may be the first time in the Captain Marvel-inspired costume. However, whilst imagery in the trailer is not in and of itself based on identity politics, as even the shot of a group of Muslims in prayer is relevant to Kamala's actual backstory, the pushing of this tired school of thinking can be heard in the narrated Be Near About a Hero themselves. Speaking to a friend, assumedly Bruno, or his MCU equivalent, Kamala tells him it's not really the brown girls from Jersey City who saved the world. I mentioned that earlier. Like, that line is cringe. The fact that she is Muslim and it is pictured, that's part of it. Maybe they do. Maybe now they do, her companion replies. Kamala's assertion is, to say the least, confusing, as a large part of MCU's roster of heroes and even some villains came from similar humble beginnings. After all, Steve Rogers, Bucky, Spider-Man, three of the most important players in the war against Thanos, were all raised in underprivileged New York homes before finding themselves in positions where they could serve as heroes. A number of non-white heroes also played pivotal roles in the Battle of Earth, including the Wakandans, Wong, various masters of mystic arts, War Machine, the Falcon, as evidence in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, came from what appears to be even more rough and downtrodden circumstances than Kamala. I mean, Kamala Khan. Further, outside Black Panther and Thor, none of the other established MCU heroes were ever in the position where they could have abilities, quote, bestowed upon them as some sort of bloodline tradition. I mean, you have this, again, Miss Marvel. This is a show for fans of Captain Marvel, and for the 12 people that read the Miss Marvel comic book. And again, totally fine that this show exists. Nothing wrong with it existing. It's just not going to be for me. Where I get into, stuff is like, okay, I know the show isn't for me. I'm not watching it. I'm not telling you not to watch it. But when the articles come out, and they will, when this show flops, and they blame Islamophobia or something like that, that'll be where I have something to say, because, you chose up front to make the show either good or socio-political. The two are rarely able to coexist. There are examples of it, very few, and none in the Marvel universe from what I can really gather. Again, there are Marvel properties and Disney properties that have a quote-unquote message that can be of a social justice variety, and those work. But when it's lazy, and I think that really comes from lazy writers. There are some things to be excited about. Moon Knight's little teaser trailer looked pretty good. Looked kind of dark and gritty. That might be something worth watching. She-Hulk, excuse me, another show that isn't for me. Looks dumb, and but again, isn't for me. And as long as there's an audience for it, it's probably the same audience that would watch Miss Marvel. You got Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. Both audiences. I thought Hawkeye, you have the final season of Hawkeye as they pass the torch from Jeremy Renner to, of course, Kate Bishop. So then you can have basically Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, and She-Hulk running up against Moon Knight. So 3 female-led shows, 1 male. This is what Disney wants. And then you have Agatha, House of Harkness. I don't think that that's going to do very well either, to be honest with you. There's so many Marvel shows. Marvel Zombies, a popular comic book run, so perhaps that will do okay. I Am Groot, maybe if it's a kids show. What If? I don't like that show at all, but again, I don't think it's inherently bad. It's just not for me. X-Men 97 is very, very, very concerning, because from what I can tell, none of the original people are actually writing it. It's supposedly, supposedly going to be a continuation, not a reboot. I don't know how you could continue something that was running 20 years ago and do it well. There's probably examples that aren't coming to mind. Maybe. I really can't think of any off the top of my head. Popular shows that ran 20 years ago that then just picked up in 2020 when, we don't have any kind of high quality writers available, because the writers are not hired based on their ability to write. They're hired on their skin color or religion. That's how, that's why you end up with poor writing, is you're not hiring the best person for the job. And as you can see, I don't think now we saw this big drop. The big drop happened when Disney Plus announced that their numbers had slowed significantly. 2 million new subscribers, okay, maybe. But you see here, Disney sell-off continues. Even on the day of Disney Plus, this tells you what people thought of the announcements. Largely meh. Largely more filler programming. What Disney Plus needs now more than anything is another hit. They can't survive off simply Mandalorian, especially after they lost so many of Mandalorian fans with how they treated Gina Carano. I know that there are still far more viewers of The Mandalorian than there were people that quit. I'm not that delusional, but they did lose a significant portion of them, myself included. And without another great show, I think Disney has a lot of really average shows. And for $8 a month or $15 a month, it really isn't worth it. If they had, even Netflix, they've got like 3 or 4 shows. It's not worth it. At least with like Hulu, you're watching old television episodes that you know are good, and there's a lot to just kind of play, which they're also owned by Disney, by the way. But the stock continues to go lower, and I think that that's based on the reception of Disney Plus Day. Was there anything you liked that day? Most of the reception of Miss Marvel was fine. It's interesting. There's 500 dislikes, but most of the comments are pretty negative. The top comments, but there are some issues with how they changed her powers. Seems to be a decent amount of interest in Moon Knight, but again, this isn't even that big of viewership. 500,000 views. I don't know. It looks like it'll be okay. The X-Men, I'm sure they'll mess up badly. I don't know. Is there anything you saw announced yesterday? Do you even care anymore what Marvel and Disney have to put out on Disney Plus? I'll be interested to see your comments in the comment section down below. We'll talk to you again real soon.